And how many of you are dealing with a child who's like elementary, like lower elementary, preschool type age? Okay, quite a few of those. Intermediate school? Not so much. High school? Any high school? Okay, so most of you are working with students who are much younger. So what I talk about might seem like, oh, that's miles and miles and years away, and I have all kinds of time to think about transition planning. But believe me, it will be upon you before you know it. And when I say transition planning, I'm talking about transitioning into adults, okay? Making the transition from high school into adulthood. And it's vitally important that you don't put that off until the end. You need to start thinking about that right away. Because that's going to frame everything that you do from this point forward. You need to have kind of in your mind, knowing what your students' abilities are, knowing what their strengths, what their weaknesses are. I mean, do you anticipate that your student will be independent as an adult? Or do you anticipate that they're going to need some kind of support? What kind of support are they going to need? Last one. And those kinds of things, because that's going to shape the decisions you make in an IEP meeting. You know, what kind of skills does my son or daughter need to build upon to make sure that we get them to the place they want to be once they're out of high school? The first one that I want to talk, handout that I want to talk a little bit about is this pink one right here. This is something that our high school teachers pass out at conferences, especially for our juniors and seniors, but it's got a lot of really important information that you might want to think about now as well. When you're thinking about transitioning into adulthood, you're thinking about employment. You know, what kind of job is my child going to have? What kind of assistance are they going to need in order to do that job? Are they going to live independently? We talked about that. Can my child advocate for himself? And that starts very young. You know, asking a teacher for help, letting his friends know what his needs are. We're going to teach that from the very beginning so that when they become adults, they can advocate for themselves as far as, you know, what kinds of things that they need on the job or what kinds of assistance they need. You know, guardianship. If you have a student who, you know, may need to, when they turn 18, they're kind of on their own. They're expected to make their own decisions. They're expected to, you know, take care of their finances and all of those things. If your child isn't ready for that by the time, you know, they're turning 17 years old and you know, I don't know that they're ready for that yet, you need to think about guardianship so that that you have still control over those finances and some of that stuff that they aren't quite ready to do. That doesn't mean necessarily that they won't ever, but those are things that we need to think about. But in the back of this paper, and it's right at the very, very back, and mine, I ran out of pink paper, so mine is not pink, but yours will be. It says General Transition Planning Timeline, and it gives you an idea of what you should be doing at each stage of your child's life to prepare for that transition into adulthood. And those are really good examples of what you can be doing all along. I don't know, many of you may or may not know, I have a daughter with special needs. She doesn't have autism, she has Down syndrome, and she's 4. So she's still in preschool. But something that I think about all the time, I think the biggest challenge, at least from my perspective, is how do I balance, you know, pushing her to her potential and expecting everything out of her that she's able to produce, and yet having realistic expectations at the same time. I don't want to have my low expectations of her mean that she's not going to reach her potential, and I don't want my expectations of her to be so high that she's frustrated. And I think that's a constant balance as we raise students with special needs, and Lisa's back there nodding at me, and she's, again, has a son that's in the 11th grade. So that's something that you always want to be thinking about. So you want to set that bar high, but you need to be realistic too. And you're doing that all throughout the time they're in school until you're reaching towards adulthood. Some of the other handouts that I gave you are just, again, all of this can be found through the Division of Disability and Rehabilitation. That's this page right here. The website is down at the bottom. If you want more information about this, if you go to www.in.gov and FSSA, this information and a lot of the other information that I copied out of, except for the pink, comes from this website, okay? And this is in the Division of Disability and Rehabilitation. As they make the transition into adulthood, junior, senior year, you're going to start hearing teachers talk about vocational rehabilitation. That is an agency that can help you make some of those transition decisions and can provide help with employment skills or independent living skills and other things like that. So there's a wealth of information on this particular website if you want to go view that. And again, a lot of the stuff that I copied off for you is actually on this website. And then the other thing that I want to talk about is the Medicaid waiver. Are you guys aware of the Medicaid waiver? Okay. This is something that you want to do yesterday, okay? And the reason I say that is because the waiting list for depending on who you talk to, the waiting list for the autism waiver is a minimum of 5 years and, sometimes up to 10, okay? So if you apply and qualify now, it may be before your child's in high school, before you even have access to those monies. But the Medicaid waiver can pay for things like a job coach or respite care or, assistance with transportation to a job or any of those services that your child may need to help them be more independent in the community. Okay? So, again, this is at the same website that I started with, indiana.gov, FSSA. This is actually within the Division of Medicaid and Health Plans. Okay? There are 3 different Medicaid waivers. You don't have to worry about the top 2 because your children aren't aged and disabled, and you may know somebody who has a child with a traumatic brain injury, and if that's the case, those kids can also apply for a waiver. But the ones that we're going to concentrate on today is the autism waiver. Your kids will, qualify for that, absolutely. For my daughter, I've applied for the developmental disabilities waiver, and the one on the back, which is the support services waiver. Okay? It's a pretty simple, it seems overwhelming, and I'll admit that even when I started that process, was a little bit overwhelmed. If you call the number on the front there, they will walk you through it. It's about a 3-page application and asks questions about, background, and you have to document the disability. I had to contact my doctor and have them write just a little statement that yes, she does have Down syndrome. As your child's in school, they may want a copy of the IEP or any evaluations that have been done, just to prove that you actually have the disability. And then once that is approved, again, you go on a wait list, and it can be a very long time. So I really, really encourage you, if you haven't done so already, that you get going on applying for the Medicaid waiver. Again, part of my hesitation, I've known about this, I knew that I should have done it like the week we got home from the hospital, because I know it's out there and I know the waiting list. For me, part of my hesitation was there's just a part of me that doesn't want to think that she's going to need those services. It's hard for me to admit that she may need help with some of these things. That may or may not be you, but at least from my perspective, that was one of the difficult things about going through this. But reality is, she probably is going to need some additional support. And if she doesn't need it, great, I don't access it. But if she does, it's there. And so, again, I talked to a woman just not too long ago at a Downs thing that her daughter is about 22, and she lives pretty independently, but she relies on Medicaid monies for transportation to the job because she doesn't work. They help her with just basic care. She can live on her, she and another roommate, but they still have people that come in and help with cooking once a week, help with, just doing some of those daily tasks that they need help with. And those kinds of things are extremely expensive. Speech therapy, occupational therapy, anything that your child needs to be independent would qualify under this, but again, it's the wait list, so you want to do that as soon as possible. If you have any questions about that, you're welcome to ask me before we leave. There is a number on the back, that's a 1-800 number. Just call and say you want more information about the disabilities waiver, autism waiver, and they will get you in contact with the people that you need to talk with. Okay? So I think that's all that I have on transition. Just, again, I encourage you to start thinking about it now as you move through school. Have that end goal in mind. And when you're in an IEP meeting, think about, okay, this is what I want my child to do, be able to do as an adult. Are we planning for that now and making those baby steps to get there? Okay?